My husband gave me a necklace for our anniversary. Then I saw the same one in a photo he took months ago. On another woman. Hi everyone. Before we get into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel's reach has been dropping a bit, and one of the best ways you can support us is by subscribing. It's quick, free, and helps us keep bringing you new and interesting stories. Your support means the world to us, and together, we can grow this channel. Thank you so much. Now let's get to today's story. I'm writing from a temporary account for obvious reasons, and I've changed some details to protect my anonymity. I never thought I'd be writing this. Even now, sitting here with my coffee gone cold and my hands trembling over the keyboard, I can barely believe this is my life. But I need to get this out. I need to tell someone, anyone, because keeping it inside is suffocating me. My husband gave me a beautiful necklace for our anniversary 3 days ago. It was perfect delicate silver chain, a small pendant with my birthstone surrounded by tiny diamonds. He presented it to me over dinner at our favorite Italian restaurant, the one where we had our third date all those years ago. He looked into my eyes when he opened the velvet box, and for a moment, I felt like I was 24 again, falling in love with this man who made me laugh until my sides hurt and who held my hand through every storm. I cried. God, I actually cried tears of joy. I thought it meant he still saw me, that after 14 years of marriage, 2 kids, a mortgage, and all the beautiful, mundane chaos of building a life together, he still chose me. He still loved me enough to remember our anniversary, to pick out something special, to make me feel treasured. I was so stupid. But let me start at the beginning, because maybe then this will all make sense. Maybe then I can understand how I missed the signs that were probably screaming at me for months. I met David at a mutual friend's barbecue in the summer of 2009. I was fresh out of college, working my first real job at a marketing firm, and absolutely convinced I had no time for relationships. I was focused, driven, maybe a little bit lonely, but unwilling to admit it. My roommate Sarah practically dragged me to that party. She said I needed to remember how to have fun, and that I was turning into a boring workaholic at 23. David was standing by the grill, laughing at something our friend Mike was saying. He had this energy about him, confident but not cocky, the kind of person who seemed comfortable in his own skin. He was wearing a faded blue t-shirt and jeans, and when he smiled, his whole face lit up. I noticed him immediately, but I was too proud to show it. He noticed me too. We ended up talking for hours that night. He worked in software development, designing educational apps for kids. He was passionate about making learning accessible and fun, and the way his eyes sparkled when he talked about his projects was infectious. We debated everything from the best pizza toppings to whether time travel would ever be possible. He made me laugh so hard I snorted wine through my nose, which should have been mortifying, but somehow just made us both laugh harder. By the end of the night, he asked for my number. I gave it to him without hesitation, without playing games, without pretending to think about it. Something in my gut told me this man was different. Our first date was coffee that turned into a 6-hour walk through the city. Our second date was a disaster of a cooking attempt at his apartment, where we burned the pasta and ordered takeout instead. Our third date was that Italian restaurant, Marcello's, where he told me he was falling for me, and I realized I was falling too. Those first few years were magic. We were young and in love, and everything felt possible. We stayed up all night talking about our dreams, our fears, the kind of life we wanted to build. We took spontaneous road trips on weekends, explored every corner of the city, made love like we were discovering each other for the first time every single time. He proposed to me on a beach in Oregon during a trip for my 26th birthday. The sun was setting, and the sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, and when he got down on one knee, I didn't even let him finish his rehearsed speech before I was saying yes, yes, yes. We got married the following spring in a small ceremony with close friends and family. My dad walked me down the aisle, and when I saw David waiting for me at the altar, tears streaming down his face, I knew I was making the right choice. I knew I was marrying my best friend, my partner, the person I wanted to build a life with. And we did build that life. We bought our first house when I was 28, a little 3-bedroom fixer-upper with a backyard and creaky floors and so much potential. David spent weekends renovating the kitchen while I painted the bedrooms, and we turned that house into our home. We adopted a rescue dog named Cooper, who became our first baby, our practice run at being responsible for another life. Our daughter Emma was born when I was 30. She had David's eyes and my stubborn determination, and from the moment they placed her in my arms, I understood what people meant when they said your heart could walk around outside your body. David was an incredible father from day one. He did the night feedings, changed diapers without complaining, sang off-key lullabies at 3 a.m. Our son Lucas came 2 years later, and suddenly our house was full of chaos and noise and so much love, I sometimes felt like my heart would burst. Those early years of parenthood were exhausting and beautiful and terrifying all at once. David and I were a team, tag-teaming bedtimes and daycare drop-offs, stealing kisses in the kitchen while the kids watched cartoons, collapsing into bed together at the end of long days. But somewhere along the way, things changed. Not dramatically, not with a bang, but slowly, like the tide going out so gradually you don't notice until the beach is bare. The passion we once had faded into comfortable routine. Date nights became rare, then monthly, then reserved for special occasions. Our conversations shifted from dreams and philosophy to grocery lists and permission slips. We stopped making love and started having sex quick, efficient, before we got too tired. Some months, we barely touched at all. I told myself this was normal. This was what happened when you built a real life together. The intensity of early love couldn't sustain itself forever, and what we had instead was deeper, more meaningful. We were partners raising children, building careers, managing a household. We were solid, we were stable, we were fine. David was still my person. He still made me coffee the way I liked it every morning. He still kissed me goodbye before work. He still reached for my hand when we watched TV together in the evenings. The gestures were smaller, quieter, but they were there. That counted for something. That counted for everything. We had our traditions, too. Every Friday was pizza night with the kids. Every Sunday, David made his famous pancakes for breakfast. Once a month, we tried to have a date night, just the two of us. And every year, on our anniversary, we went back to Marcello's, the Italian restaurant where he first told me he loved me. This year marked 14 years of marriage, 14 years of building a life together, of growing from 2 kids in love into parents, homeowners, adults with responsibilities, and mortgage payments and retirement accounts. I'd been looking forward to our anniversary for weeks. The kids were going to stay with my parents for the weekend, and David and I would have the house to ourselves for the first time in months. But in the weeks leading up to the anniversary, something shifted. I noticed small things, little changes in David's behavior, that I tried not to overthink. He started spending more time on his phone. He'd always been a tech guy, always connected, but this was different. He'd be scrolling through something and suddenly turn the screen away when I walked into the room. He'd get texts and step outside to answer them. He'd smile at his phone in this secret way that made my stomach turn. But when I asked who he was talking to, he'd say it was just work stuff, just the guys, nothing important. He started working late more often. 3 nights a week turned into 4, then 5. He'd come home after the kids were asleep, grab leftovers from the fridge, and disappear into his office to finish up some project. When I asked about it, he said they were understaffed, that there was this big deadline, that it would calm down soon. I believed him because I wanted to believe him. He started going to the gym. This should have been a good thing. David had been talking about getting back in shape for years, but between work and kids and life, it never seemed to happen. Suddenly, he was waking up at 5 a.m. to work out before everyone else got up. He bought new clothes, started caring about his appearance again in a way he hadn't in years. He looked good, younger, happier. I should have been happy for him. Instead, I felt this creeping unease I couldn't name. But then there were these moments of extra attention that confused me. He'd bring home flowers for no reason. He'd compliment my hair, my outfit, tell me I looked beautiful in a way he hadn't in years. He'd suggest we watch a movie together after the kids were in bed, pull me close on the couch, stroke my hair. It felt like he was trying, like he was making an effort to reconnect, and I clung to those moments like proof that everything was fine. I convinced myself I was being paranoid, that I was letting my insecurities and fears create problems that didn't exist. David loved me. We had built a life together. We had children together. He wasn't the kind of man who would throw all that away. I knew him. I trusted him. Or I thought I did. The day of our anniversary started perfectly. I took the day off work and spent the morning getting ready. I got my hair done, my nails, bought a new dress emerald green, fitted, the kind of dress that made me feel beautiful and confident. I wanted to look good for him. I wanted to remind him why he fell in love with me all those years ago. We dropped the kids off at my parents' house in the afternoon. Emma and Lucas were excited about their sleepover, barely waving goodbye as they ran inside to see what Grandma had baked for them. David and I drove to Marcello's with the windows down, late summer air warm against our skin. He held my hand across the center console, and I felt a rush of affection for this man I'd chosen, this life we'd built. The restaurant was busy, but they'd saved our favorite table, the one by the window overlooking the garden with the twinkling lights. David ordered us a bottle of wine, a good one, the kind we usually saved for special occasions. We toasted to 14 years, to many more to come, to the life we'd built together. The food was perfect. The atmosphere was romantic, and David was attentive in a way he hadn't been in months. He asked about my work, actually listened to my stories about the difficult client I'd been dealing with. He told me I looked stunning, that the green dress brought out the color of my eyes. He laughed at my jokes and looked at me like he really saw me, like I was more than just the mother of his children, or the person who paid the bills, or the woman who fell asleep next to him most nights without much fanfare. And then, after dessert, he pulled out a small velvet box. My heart stopped. For one ridiculous second, I thought maybe it was an engagement ring. Maybe he was proposing again, like some couples do, renewing our vows. But that didn't make sense. We were already married. We'd been married for 14 years. He pushed the box across the table toward me, and his smile was nervous, almost shy. "Open it," he said. My hands were shaking as I lifted the lid. Inside was the most beautiful necklace I'd ever seen. Delicate silver chain, thin and elegant. The pendant was a small teardrop shape with my birthstone sapphire, deep blue in the center, surrounded by tiny diamonds that caught the candlelight and sparkled like stars. It was exactly my style, understated but beautiful, the kind of jewelry I'd wear every day. I looked up at David, and there were tears in my eyes. "It's perfect," I whispered. "How did you—" He reached across the table and took my hand. "I wanted to get you something special," he said, "something to show you how much you mean to me. How much I love you. You've given me everything, our home, our children, our life. You deserve to know how treasured you are." I was crying now, not even trying to hide it. I stood up and walked around the table, and he stood too, and I kissed him right there in the middle of the restaurant. He fastened the necklace around my neck, and I touched the pendant, felt its weight against my collarbone, and I thought, this is it. This is us reconnecting. This is proof that we still have it, that our love is still real and alive and worth fighting for. The rest of the evening was perfect. We went home and made love slowly, tenderly, in a way we hadn't in so long. He whispered that he loved me, that I was beautiful, that he was lucky to have me. I fell asleep in his arms, feeling happier than I had in months, maybe years. The necklace was still around my neck, and every time I touched it, I felt this warm glow of being chosen, being loved, being seen. I wore the necklace every day after that. To work, running errands, making dinner, helping the kids with homework. It became part of me, this physical reminder that my husband loved me, that our marriage was strong, that everything was going to be okay. And then, 3 days after our anniversary, my entire world shattered. It was a Sunday morning. David was out at the gym, or at least that's where he said he was going. The kids were watching cartoons in the living room, and I was making breakfast when I realized I'd forgotten to text my friend Karen back about plans for the following weekend. My phone was upstairs charging, so I grabbed David's phone from the counter to send a quick message from his Facebook Messenger. We shared each other's passcodes, had nothing to hide. Or so I thought. I opened his phone and went to pull up Messenger, but I accidentally swiped to his photos instead. The screen showed his camera roll, and I was about to navigate away when something caught my eye. A photo, from months ago, based on the date stamp. May, 4 months before our anniversary. The photo showed a woman I didn't recognize. She was younger than me, maybe late 20s, with long dark hair and a bright smile. She was wearing a black cocktail dress and standing in what looked like an upscale bar or restaurant. She was laughing at the camera, at whoever was taking the picture, at my husband. But that wasn't what made my blood run cold. Around her neck was a necklace, a delicate silver chain, a pendant with a blue stone surrounded by tiny diamonds. The exact same necklace that was currently resting against my collarbone. I stared at the photo. I zoomed in. I looked at every detail, the chain, the pendant, the way it caught the light. It was identical, not similar, not just the same style, the exact same necklace. My hands started shaking. My breath came in short gasps. This couldn't be what it looked like. There had to be an explanation. Maybe it was a different necklace that just looked similar. Maybe this was from before we were married, some old photo that somehow had the wrong date. Maybe she was a coworker, and they'd gotten matching gifts from the company. Maybe. I scrolled through more photos, desperate for context, for anything that would make this make sense. There were more pictures of her. Not many, but enough. Her in a park, smiling at the camera. Her in a coffee shop, holding up a latte with a heart drawn in foam. Her in what looked like David's car, the one I knew, because I could see the little air freshener shaped like a pine tree that Lucas had insisted we buy. And in 2 of the photos, she was wearing the necklace. My necklace. The necklace my husband had given me for our anniversary and told me he'd picked out especially for me. The necklace that was supposed to symbolize how much he loved me, how treasured I was. I felt like I was going to be sick. The kitchen spun around me, and I had to grab the counter to steady myself. My mind was racing, trying to process what I was seeing, trying to find any explanation that didn't lead to the obvious, terrible conclusion. But there was no other explanation. The truth was, right there in front of me, glowing on the screen of my husband's phone. David had given that necklace to another woman first, months before our anniversary, and then, for some unfathomable reason, he'd given the same necklace to me. Maybe he'd bought 2. Maybe this was all some horrible coincidence. But as I stood there staring at those photos, at this beautiful stranger wearing my anniversary gift, I knew. I knew with a certainty that made my chest ache and my eyes burn. This wasn't a coincidence. This was something else. Something worse. I don't know how long I stood there. It could have been seconds or minutes or hours. Time felt strange and fluid and wrong. I could hear the kids laughing in the other room at something on TV. I could hear the coffee maker gurgling. I could hear birds singing outside the window. Everything was normal, except nothing was normal. Nothing would ever be normal again. I heard the garage door open. David was home. I didn't move. I couldn't. I just stood there holding his phone, staring at the photo of this woman in my necklace, feeling like the floor had opened up beneath me and I was falling. The door from the garage opened and David walked in, sweaty from his workout, earbuds in, completely oblivious. He pulled out his earbuds and smiled when he saw me. "Hey, babe," he said. "Started breakfast already? Smells good." I turned to look at him. He must have seen something in my face because his smile faltered. "What's wrong?" he asked. I held up his phone, the photo still glowing on the screen. I couldn't speak. I didn't trust my voice. I just held it up and watched his face change. He went pale. His eyes widened. His mouth opened, but no words came out. In that moment, in that single terrible moment, I knew everything. I didn't need him to explain. I didn't need a confession. His face told me everything I needed to know. "That's my phone," he finally said, his voice strange and tight. "Why do you have my phone? Who is she?" My voice came out as a whisper. "Who is this woman, David?" He took a step toward me, and I took a step back. He stopped, held up his hands like he was approaching a frightened animal. "Babe, let me explain." "The necklace." I touched the pendant at my throat, suddenly wanting to rip it off, throw it across the room, burn it, destroy it. She's wearing the same necklace. The one you gave me for our anniversary. She's wearing it in this photo from May. "That's not—" "I can explain. Did you give her this necklace first?" The question came out sharp, cutting. "Did you give another woman my anniversary gift before you gave it to me?" He ran his hand through his hair, his face contorted with panic, and something else, something that might have been guilt. "It's not what you think." I laughed, and it sounded harsh and broken even to my own ears. "It's not what I think? I'm looking at a photo of another woman wearing the necklace you gave me. The necklace you said you picked out, especially for me. What exactly do you think I think this is, David? She's just someone from work. It doesn't mean anything." "Someone from work." I repeated the words slowly, trying to process them. "Someone from work who you take pictures of. Someone from work who you give jewelry to. Someone from work who you've been texting and calling and lying to me about for months. You're overreacting." His voice changed, got defensive, almost angry. "You're reading into things that aren't there." Overreacting. The word hung in the air between us. I'm overreacting. I'm holding a photo of another woman wearing the necklace you gave me for our 14th wedding anniversary, and I'm overreacting. "Did you sleep with her?" The question came out before I could stop it, raw and desperate. "David, did you sleep with her?" He didn't answer right away, and that hesitation told me everything. His silence was a confession. Oh my God. I felt the tears coming now, hot and furious. Oh my God. How long? How long has this been going on? "It's over." He stepped toward me again. "It's over, I swear. It was a mistake. A stupid mistake. I ended it weeks ago. Weeks ago. So our anniversary, when you gave me that necklace, when you looked into my eyes and told me how treasured I was, you were what? Fresh off ending your affair? Was the necklace supposed to be some kind of guilt present? Were you trying to assuage your conscience by recycling jewelry?" "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like, David? Please explain it to me, because I'm really struggling to understand how you could do this. How you could give me the same gift you gave your mistress. How you could make our anniversary, our 14th anniversary, about her. I didn't buy 2 necklaces." His voice was quiet now, defeated. "I only bought one." The words hit me like a physical blow. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. "What?" "I bought it for our anniversary. For you. I always planned to give it to you, but she saw it when I was carrying it in my bag one day, before I'd wrapped it, and she asked if it was for her. She just assumed. And I didn't correct her. I let her think it was a gift for her. She wore it once or twice, and then when things ended, I got it back, and you gave it to me." I finished his sentence, my voice hollow. "You gave me a necklace that your affair partner had worn, that had been around her neck, that she thought was a gift from you. You gave me something that had been hers first." He was crying now too, and I hated him for it. I hated that he thought he had the right to cry, that he thought his tears mattered in this moment. "I was always going to give it to you," he kept saying. "It was always meant for you, but it wasn't mine first." I reached up and unclasped the necklace, my fingers fumbling with the tiny catch. It was hers. She wore it. She smiled at the camera wearing it. She probably thought you loved her. She probably thought it meant something. I threw the necklace on the counter between us. It landed with a small clatter, the diamonds still catching the light, still beautiful, now forever tainted. 14 years, I said. 14 years of marriage. 2 children. A life we built together from nothing. And you threw it away for what? Some woman from work? Someone younger? Someone who made you feel less like a tired dad and more like the man you used to be? It wasn't about that. Then what was it about? I was screaming now, not caring if the kids heard me, not caring about anything except this rage and grief consuming me from the inside out. What was it about, David? Was I not enough? Was our life not enough? What did I do wrong? You didn't do anything wrong. He was sobbing, reaching for me, and I jerked away from his touch. You're perfect. You're an amazing wife and mother, and You just what? Had an affair anyway? Gave another woman a necklace that was supposed to be mine? Lied to me every single day for months? Came home and kissed me and made love to me and tucked our children into bed while you were sleeping with someone else? Mama? We both froze. Emma was standing in the doorway to the kitchen, her eyes wide and frightened. Lucas was behind her, peeking around his sister's shoulder. They'd heard everything. Or enough. More than they should have. I took a deep breath, tried to compose myself, failed miserably. Hey, babies, I said, my voice cracking. It's okay. Mom and Daddy we're just having a discussion. You're yelling. Emma's voice was small. Are you getting divorced? The question hung in the air. I looked at David, at this man I'd loved for more than half my adult life, this man who I'd built everything with, and I didn't know the answer. I didn't know anything anymore. No, sweetie, David said, his voice too loud, too cheerful, completely wrong. We're not getting divorced. We're just working through something. Why don't you go back and watch TV? Daddy will make pancakes in a little bit. Emma looked at me, her eyes searching my face for reassurance I couldn't give. I managed a nod, and she took Lucas's hand and led him back to the living room. But I knew she didn't believe us. She was 11 years old enough to understand that something was very wrong, that the foundation of her world was cracking. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I couldn't be in this kitchen, in this house, with this man for one more second. I need to go, I said. I need to leave. Where are you going to go? I don't know. Away. Anywhere. I grabbed my purse, my phone, my keys. I didn't even know if I was wearing shoes. I needed to get out. Please don't go. David was in front of me, blocking my path to the garage. Please, we can work through this. We can go to counseling. I'll do anything. Just please don't leave. Move. My voice was ice. I love you. He was crying harder now. I love you so much. It was a mistake, the worst mistake of my life. But I love you, and I love our family, and I'll spend the rest of my life making this up to you if you'll just give me a chance. Move out of my way, David. He moved. He stepped aside and let me pass, and I walked through the garage and got in my car and backed out of the driveway, leaving my husband and my children and my life behind. I drove with no destination in mind. I just drove, tears streaming down my face, barely able to see the road. I ended up at the lake, the one where we used to bring the kids to feed the ducks when they were little. I parked and sat in my car and cried until I had nothing left. My phone was vibrating constantly. Texts from David. Calls from David. I ignored them all. Finally, a text from Sarah, my friend, the one who'd dragged me to that barbecue where I'd met David all those years ago. David called me. He told me what happened. I'm so sorry. Where are you? Do you need me to come get you? I texted her back my location, and she arrived 20 minutes later. She got in the passenger seat of my car and pulled me into her arms and let me cry on her shoulder until I was empty. Tell me everything, she said. So I did. I told her about the necklace, about the photo, about the woman I didn't know wearing my anniversary gift. I told her about David's confession, about how he'd only bought one necklace and let his affair partner think it was for her. I told her about Emma's face when she asked if we were getting divorced. What are you going to do? Sarah asked when I finished. I don't know. I stared out at the lake, watching ducks glide across the surface, their movements so peaceful, so simple. I don't know anything anymore. 14 years, Sarah. 14 years, and he threw it all away. She squeezed my hand. I'm so sorry. You don't deserve this. You deserve so much better. Do I, though? The question surprised me as much as it surprised her. Maybe this is my fault. Maybe I let things get too comfortable, too routine. Maybe I stopped trying. Maybe if I'd been more— Stop! Sarah's voice was fierce. Stop right there. This is not your fault. You didn't make him cheat. You didn't make him lie. You didn't make him give you a necklace that another woman had worn. He made those choices. He betrayed you. This is on him. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to feel that righteous anger, that clear certainty that I was the wronged party. But all I felt was hollow and broken, and so tired. I stayed with Sarah that night. I texted David that I was safe but needed space. I texted my mom to ask if the kids could stay another night. I turned off my phone and lay in Sarah's guest room staring at the ceiling, touching my bare collarbone where the necklace had been, trying to process the fact that my marriage might be over. The next few days were a blur. I went back home to be with the kids, but I couldn't look at David. I slept in the guest room. I moved through the house like a ghost, going through the motions of making meals and helping with homework and bedtime routines, but I wasn't really there. I was somewhere else, somewhere broken. David tried everything. He apologized constantly. He begged for forgiveness. He said he'd go to counseling, do whatever it took. He wrote me letters. He sent me flowers. He tried to hold my hand, and I pulled away like his touch burned. He told me her name was Rebecca. She worked in his office, in a different department. It started innocently lunch breaks, coffee, conversation. She made him feel seen, he said. Made him feel like himself again, not just Emma and Lucas's dad or my husband. She was fun and spontaneous and made him remember what it felt like to be young. It had been going on for 5 months. 5 months of lies and late nights and secret phone calls. 5 months of him coming home to me and our children after being with her. 5 months of building a life with someone else while pretending everything was fine with me. He'd ended it 6 weeks ago, he said, right before our anniversary. She'd wanted more, wanted him to leave me, to be with her for real. And that's when he realized what he had to lose. Our family, our life. Me. So he'd broken it off. And then he'd given me the necklace that she'd worn. The necklace that was supposed to symbolize his love for me, but was really just a reminder of his betrayal. I couldn't get the image out of my head. That woman in the photo, wearing my necklace, smiling. Had she loved him? Had he loved her? When I wore the necklace those 3 days after our anniversary, touching it constantly, feeling treasured and loved, had I been wearing the ghost of their relationship? Had every compliment from a stranger, every time I'd looked in the mirror and admired it, been tainted by the fact that it had been hers first? I started digging. I couldn't help myself. I looked up Rebecca on social media. She was pretty, younger than me by almost 10 years. She worked in marketing at David's company. Her Instagram was full of pictures of her travels, her friends, her perfect life. She looked happy. She looked free in a way I hadn't felt in years. And there, buried in her posts from June, was a photo of her at some kind of rooftop party. She was wearing the necklace. The caption read, "Feeling special tonight. Sometimes the simplest gestures mean the most." Heart emoji. I stared at that post for a long time. The comments were full of her friends saying she looked beautiful, asking about the necklace. One person wrote, "New man? Spill." Rebecca had replied with a winking emoji. She'd thought the necklace was a sign that David loved her. She'd worn it proudly, posted about it publicly. And then he'd taken it back, given it to me, and I'd done the same thing. I'd worn it proudly. I'd touched it constantly like a talisman. I'd thought it meant something. We were both fools. 2 weeks after I found the photo, I made a decision. I couldn't keep living in this limbo, sleeping in separate rooms, barely speaking, pretending everything was okay for the kids while dying inside. I needed to figure out what I wanted. What came next? whether our marriage could survive this or whether it was already dead. I told David I wanted a trial separation. Not a divorce, not yet, but space. Time apart to figure out if we could come back from this or if it was too broken to fix. He cried. He begged me to reconsider. But I was firm. He moved into an apartment across town. We told the kids that Daddy was going to be staying somewhere else for a while, that we were working through some grown-up stuff, that we both loved them more than anything in the world. Emma looked at me with those knowing eyes, and I saw the exact moment she stopped believing in fairy tales. The weeks after David moved out were strange. The house felt too quiet without him, but also lighter somehow, like I could breathe for the first time in months. I started going to therapy. I started talking to a lawyer just to understand my options. I started trying to figure out who I was outside of being David's wife, Emma and Lucas's mom, the woman who kept everything running smoothly. And then, 3 weeks into our separation, Rebecca made the decision for me. She posted on Instagram a long, detailed post about her relationship with a married man. She didn't name David, but she didn't have to. The details were specific enough. She wrote about how he'd pursued her, how he'd made her believe he was leaving his wife, how he'd given her gifts and made promises. She wrote about the necklace, my necklace, and how he'd taken it back when he ended things, claimed he needed it for his wife. She wrote, "I was the other woman, and I didn't even fully realize it until it was over. To the wife who got the necklace that was supposed to be mine, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I believed his lies. I'm sorry I fell for a man who was never really available. I'm sorry for my part in hurting you, even though I never knew you existed for most of it. And to him, the man who thought he could have both worlds, I hope it was worth it. I hope when your wife wears that necklace, you think of me. I hope you choke on your guilt." The post went viral in their office. Screenshots were shared. People who knew David sent him the post. His boss called him in for a meeting about inappropriate workplace relationships. His name was Mud. And me, I became the pitied wife, the woman everyone whispered about, the one whose husband cheated and was dumb enough to give her his mistress's jewelry. I hated the pity, I hated the gossip, but I couldn't help feeling a tiny bit of vindication. Rebecca's post made one thing crystal clear. I could never trust David again. It wasn't just the cheating, it was the depth of the lies, the calculated nature of his deception. He'd bought one necklace and let 2 women think it was special. He'd juggled 2 relationships, 2 lives, with enough skill to fool both of us for months. He'd looked me in the eyes on our anniversary and told me I was treasured while knowing that same necklace had hung around another woman's neck just weeks before. How do you come back from that? How do you rebuild trust when the foundation has been completely demolished? How do you look at someone and believe anything they say when you know how easily, how smoothly, how convincingly they can lie? I couldn't. I tried to imagine a future where we worked through this, where I forgave him, where we went to counseling and slowly rebuilt what he'd destroyed. I tried to picture myself 5 years from now, 10 years, 20, still with David, having moved past this. But every time I tried to see that future, all I could see was myself touching my throat where that necklace had been, feeling the phantom weight of his betrayal, wondering if he was lying again, if there was another Rebecca, if I was just the fool who stayed. The decision came to me clearly one morning as I was making coffee. The kids were still asleep, and the house was quiet, and I was standing in the kitchen where I discovered the truth, and I realized I didn't want to be that woman, the woman who stayed out of fear or habit or because leaving was too hard, the woman who taught her daughter that this was what you accepted from the man who promised to love you, the woman who spent the rest of her life looking over her shoulder, checking phones, wondering. I wanted to be the woman who knew her worth, who understood that 14 years of history didn't obligate me to 14 more years of doubt, who could look her children in the eyes and show them that love without respect wasn't love at all. I called my lawyer that afternoon. David fought the divorce at first. He showed up at the house crying, begging, promising things would be different. He wrote letters to my parents, to our friends, trying to get people on his side. He accused me of giving up too easily, of not fighting for our family, of being selfish. But I wasn't the one who'd been selfish. I wasn't the one who'd risked everything we'd built for an affair. I wasn't the one who'd given my spouse recycled jewelry and called it love. The divorce took 8 months to finalize. We split custody of Emma and Lucas 50-50. We divided our assets, our home, our life. We sat across from each other in mediation rooms and lawyers' offices, and we dismantled 14 years of marriage piece by piece, decision by decision, signature by signature. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. Harder than I thought possible. There were nights I cried myself to sleep, nights I questioned everything, nights I almost called him and said I'd changed my mind. But I didn't. I held firm. I chose myself. The day our divorce was finalized, I went home to the apartment I'd moved into 6 months earlier. It was smaller than our house, but it was mine. I'd decorated it the way I wanted. I'd created space that was just for me, where I could breathe, where I could heal, where I could figure out who I was as a person, not just as half of a couple. I made myself dinner and opened a bottle of wine, and I sat on my balcony watching the sunset, and for the first time in months, I felt something like peace. Emma struggled with the divorce the most. She was angry at both of us, at David for cheating, at me for leaving. She acted out at school, became withdrawn at home, started seeing a therapist twice a week. It broke my heart to watch my daughter suffer because of choices her father and I had made. But slowly, gradually, she started to heal too. She started to understand that sometimes love isn't enough, that sometimes the healthiest choice is to walk away. Lucas was younger, more adaptable. He missed having both his parents in the same house, but he adjusted to the new normal of 2 homes, 2 bedrooms, shuffling back and forth. He still asked sometimes when Daddy was coming home, and every time he did, it felt like a knife to the heart. But we survived. We adapted. We built a new kind of family, fractured but functional, broken but healing. David started dating someone new about a year after our divorce was final. I heard about it through mutual friends. She was age-appropriate this time, divorced with kids of her own. I felt a twinge when I heard the news, not jealousy exactly, but something complicated and painful. The realization that he was moving on, building a new life, while I was still piecing together the shattered remains of the old one. But I was moving on too, in my own way. I threw myself into my work, got a promotion. I reconnected with old friends I'd neglected during my marriage. I took up painting, something I'd loved in college, but abandoned somewhere along the way. I traveled small trips at first, just weekend getaways, but eventually bigger adventures. I took Emma to Paris for her 13th birthday, just the 2 of us. I went to Costa Rica with Sarah and spent a week doing yoga and surfing and remembering what it felt like to be free. I went on a few dates. Nothing serious, nothing that lasted. It was hard to trust again, hard to open up, hard to believe that anyone would see me as more than damaged goods, the divorced woman with the sad story. But I tried. I put myself out there. I learned that I was still desirable, still interesting, still worthy of being chosen. And slowly, painfully, I learned to forgive myself, to stop replaying those last few years of marriage, looking for signs I'd missed, wondering if I could have prevented it, to accept that David's choices were his alone, that I couldn't have loved him into faithfulness, that no amount of being a good wife would have stopped him from betraying me if he'd decided that's what he wanted to do. 2 years after the divorce, I was cleaning out a box of old jewelry when I found it. The necklace. I'd forgotten I still had it, had shoved it in the back of a drawer after that terrible Sunday morning and never looked at it again. I held it up to the light, and it sparkled just as beautifully as it had that first night at Marcello's. The sapphire still glowed deep blue. The diamonds still caught the light. It was objectively beautiful. It hadn't changed, but everything it represented had. It wasn't love anymore. It wasn't even betrayal anymore. It was just a piece of metal and stone, expensive and pretty and meaningless. I thought about throwing it away, about selling it. about mailing it back to David with a note saying something cutting and clever. But in the end, I did something else. I drove to a women's shelter on the other side of town, one I'd been donating to since the divorce. I walked in with the necklace in a small velvet bag, and I gave it to the woman at the front desk. "This is for someone who needs it," I said. "Someone who's starting over. Someone who deserves something beautiful." She took the bag and smiled at me, and I walked out of that shelter feeling lighter than I had in years. I'd taken something that represented my pain, my humiliation, my husband's betrayal, and I'd transformed it into something good. Something that would help someone else. Something that would make a woman starting over feel special, feel valued, feel like she mattered. I'd reclaimed it. I'd reclaimed myself. Now, 3 years after that anniversary dinner, 3 years after I opened that velvet box and cried tears of joy, I can tell this story without my hands shaking. I can look back at the woman I was, the one who believed in fairy tales and second chances and the power of love to overcome anything, and I feel tender toward her. She was naive, maybe, too trusting, too willing to ignore the signs that something was wrong. But she wasn't stupid. She wasn't weak. She was a woman who loved deeply, who built a life with everything she had, who believed in the promises she'd made and thought her husband believed in them too. And when she discovered she was wrong, when her world shattered around her, she didn't fall apart. She picked up the pieces. She protected her children. She made the hard choice, the brave choice, the choice that honored her worth. She survived. I survived. People ask me sometimes if I regret my marriage, if I wish I'd never met David, if I'd change it all, if I could go back. The answer is complicated. Do I regret the affair, the lies, the necklace? Of course. That pain nearly destroyed me. But I don't regret Emma and Lucas. I don't regret the good years we had, the memories we made, the life we built. I don't regret learning what I'm capable of surviving. I just regret believing that his love was enough, that history mattered more than honesty, that a beautiful necklace could symbolize anything other than what it actually was. A lie disguised as a gift, betrayal wrapped in velvet. If I could go back to that anniversary dinner and tell myself what was coming, would I? Would I warn her that the necklace she's admiring, the one making her cry happy tears, has already been worn by another woman? That her husband is not the man she thinks he is? That everything she believes about her marriage is about to be revealed as a beautiful, terrible lie? I don't know. Maybe that woman needed to have that moment of joy, false though it was. Maybe she needed to believe, just a little longer, that she was treasured, that she was chosen, that love was real and lasting and true. Because the truth is, love can be real, it can be lasting, it can be true. Just not always with the person you think, not always in the way you imagined. I'm learning to believe in love again, slowly. Not the fairy tale kind, not the kind that ignores red flags and explains away lies. But the real kind, the kind that shows up honestly, the kind that doesn't recycle gifts or juggle relationships or make you question your sanity. The kind that looks at you, really looks at you, and sees someone worth being truthful with. I don't know if I'll ever get married again. I don't know if I'll ever stand in front of someone and promise forever, knowing now how easily forever can be broken. But I know I'll never again accept less than I deserve. I'll never again ignore my instincts. I'll never again wear a gift that doesn't feel entirely, completely, honestly mine. And if someone ever gives me jewelry again, you can bet I'll be checking to see who else wore it first. To everyone reading this, who's ever felt the ground shift beneath them, who's ever discovered that the life they thought they had was an illusion, who's ever held a gift and wondered if it was really meant for them, you're not alone. You're not crazy. You're not overreacting. Trust your gut. Honor your worth. And when something feels wrong, investigate. Because sometimes that uncomfortable feeling in your chest isn't paranoia or insecurity or fear. Sometimes it's your intuition telling you the truth your heart doesn't want to accept. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself, for your children, for the person you want to become, is to take off the necklace, walk away from the lie, and start building a life that's genuinely, Authentically, completely yours. That's what I did. And 3 years later, I'm still standing, still healing, still growing, still learning to love the woman in the mirror who had the courage to choose herself. The necklace is gone, but I'm still here. And that's the only treasure that really matters.